Did you know that you can be in a cult and not even know it because nobody's calling it a cult? I was in one of those Twitter things, discussion, I guess you'd want to call it, uh, where somebody on the other end was having their own argument and they weren't really responding to what I was saying, except to call me names. It was all wrapped up in very lofty language. So it was kind of like, I know what you're doing. You're calling me names because you don't like what I say, but you're pretending that it's all an intellectual exercise of some kind in your own mind. And you're not even really responding to the things that I've said. What I said was that the Democratic Party is just as much of a cult as MAGA right now. And I used to be a Democrat. I loved the Democratic Party for most of my life. And people will go, oh, you're a right-winger. I've never been a right-winger. I don't have anything against people that are right-wing. I don't consider them Nazis or evil. Or I entertained thoughts like that in the 80s, and I'm ashamed of those. But as we've mentioned before, I was a blackout drunk during the 80s, and I'm going to blame everything that I ever did or said or thought on drinking way too much back in the 80s. And for some reason, my garage band thinks it wants to tell me something, but let's just ignore GarageBand for now and make it quit. Yeah, love that. Love that when that happens. Hi, I'm Jayson Danner, and I'm on Twitter sometimes. Sometimes I'm not, because sometimes I just get it's just too much. It's just too much. I've had a heart attack in my life. I've had a stroke in my life, and I'm barely hanging in there by a thread, if not just a spider web some days. So I don't need stupid arguments. I've been around the planet for 60 years now, and it's just like, when do you ever get respect? You don't really. You didn't get respect when you were a 12-year-old, 12-year-olds were like, you got thoughts, but man, you got a big mouth. Why don't you shut up until you're older? And now I'm older, and it's like, hey, you've got thoughts, but we don't care about your thoughts. So we care about our own thoughts, but we don't care about your thoughts. So anyway, this is a little lecture about, if you want to call it a lecture, a little talk about how all major parties and political movements have become cult-like. And this didn't just start overnight, and it didn't start with MAGA, and it didn't start with the Clintons. It's been happening for quite a while now, sneaking up on us to the point where a lot of people don't even realize it. I've found this a little article on a blog here. I'm not going to. I could say, where I got it. Here it is. It's Sam and Tanner, who's not related to me at all, but they probably got this information from somewhere else, but they put it together very nicely. The first sign of a cult is that there's someone in a cult, but in a political party or political movement, that you're not allowed to criticize. Even if the criticism is true, you're probably in a cult. Now, who is it that we're not allowed to criticize right now? Because, he's so much better than the last guy. He's at least polite, and at least but there's things to criticize him about. We're not really allowed. And when I say we're not allowed, I'm not saying that we can't. I'm just saying that if we do it, there's going to be pushback. People won't just go, well, you're allowed your opinion. That's nice that you have an opinion on this. Here's my opinion. And we can have a good discussion about it. No. What happens is we say our piece, and several people will do what they do in cults. They'll either jump on you and try and say how wrong you are and eventually shun you from their lives, even if they were great friends for several years and they agreed with many, many things that you said and liked many things that you said and shared many things that you said, but you say one thing against the leader, or in this case, one of the leaders. We got several leaders in the Democratic Party right now that you find that you can't really criticize without a lot of negative pushback. So it's kind of like a bullying situation in the groupthink. Cults begin with a charismatic leader who claims some supreme knowledge. They may call themselves a prophet, messiah, messenger, or an enlightened teacher. Now, this doesn't really apply to politics, but they do like to prop themselves up as someone who has all the answers and all the best intentions. And again, you can't push back at that. You can't go, well, I don't know about that. I've watched your career in national politics for 50 years now, and I don't really think you have the best of intentions based on your history. They can also be CEOs, military officials, politicians, and self-help gurus. That's not to say that all CEOs or military officials or all politicians or all self-help gurus are in this category, but they can be in this category. Sometimes I don't think that you need a job. I think it's just the way that a person acts so much. Cult leaders convince members to forfeit their critical thinking ability in return for sense of belonging, authority, and purpose. It's like a gang. To the members, it doesn't matter what the evidence or logic may suggest, the leader is always right, and their misdeeds are always justified. Always justified. Well, from falling up the stairs to continuing bombings and continuing the children in cages and making it even worse than it was under Trump, always justified. They're blaming the falling up the stairs on the wind, even though if you watch the tape, there's nothing indicating that it's windy. If it was windy, his suit would be going, and his hair plugs would be probably, unless they're just really in there tight, his hair would be, like, oh my God, it's so windy. But, it's just obvious that he was trying to show that he was a vital person and wanted to walk up the stairs really fast. And, I can do this like Mike Pence can do it. So, but he fell down. And I don't really care that he fell down, but if Trump fell down, they'd be all over his case. So your opposition party in your own cult, the opposition people are demonized and their faults are highlighted. Gerald Ford fell down, and Saturday Night Live was born, and their entire first year was Chevy Chase falling down, making fun of Gerald Ford, which is fine to make fun of politicians. That's fine. But right now, I just don't see Saturday Night Live as, or any show like this, as just making fun of Joe Biden for falling down all year, for a whole season. I don't see that happening. Do you? Maybe you do. Okay, number 2. The group suppresses skepticism. If you're only allowed to study your organization through approved sources, you're probably in a cult. Now, think about that in relation to politics. If you're only allowed to study or even think about your organization through the approved sources, not people on YouTube or any other with a BitChute or whatever. Doubting members are encouraged to isolate themselves from outside influences and focus solely on the doctrine of the cult. That's been my experience with the Democratic Party since Hillary Clinton was running for president in 2008. If you weren't on Hillary's side, you were against Hillary, and just any criticism was like, oh, you're giving fodder to the other side. You're giving the other side ammunition, is what they'd say. And this goes way back. This goes back to the 80s. I'm sure it goes way back before the 80s, but the 80s saw a lot of infighting in the Democratic Party, and the party itself decided that if you criticize another candidate, you're just giving this ammo to the other side, the others, and you shouldn't do that, even if it's true. So if Al Gore back in '88 criticized Joe Biden, people would say, oh, we'll see, the Republicans use that criticism against Joe Biden and it's all your fault, even though the criticism is true. So criticism in a cult is forbidden. That's probably when it started more. It was about 1988, after that big loss. This microphone loves to pick up my tummy rumblings, and sorry about that. They don't go away even if I eat, so why bother? That's why you want your microphone up here instead of on your table, because it's really at tummy grumble length, but I don't have one of those things that makes it go up here away from my tummy. So we'll just have to deal with tummy noises when I make a video. And again, GarageBand thinks it wants to tell me something, and again, I have to quit GarageBand. It probably wants to send an update or something. Something else that the group does, if you're in a group, and I'm not saying this is just Democrats, I think that this is probably the way all the parties run these days, not just the mainstream parties either, because they're all using the same tricks. They're all using the same political advisors, and these political advisors are using the same tactics. And if they get fired from one party, they'll just go work for another party, and they don't really care about who wins. They just care about winning if they're in charge of the campaign. The group delegitimizes former members. Now, I don't consider myself a Democrat anymore, even though I loved the Democratic Party my entire life. And I was always rooting for them. I always wanted them to win. There was never a time that I thought, maybe I'll give the other, the person in the GOP a chance. I was never like open to that idea ever growing up. And I'm 60. So I was always rooting for the Democrats. But now what I find myself doing mostly is criticizing this party that I was always affiliated with, because they're so busy criticizing the other party that they can't see their own faults, or they don't want to see their own faults. And that's what happens. If you can't think of a legitimate reason for leaving your group, you're probably in a cult. Because the cult considers itself the ultimate authority on truth. It can't imagine anybody leaving it with their integrity intact. Thus, it has to perpetuate a false narrative that former members were deceived, proud, immoral, or lazy, or other things. If former members speak out, they are dismissed as bitter, angry, dishonest, or evil. Cults often impose some kind of shunning to shame former members and prevent them from infecting other members with the truth. Now, I had a friend on social media who was a friend for such a long time. In fact, she helped get this radio stream of mine started and supported it for a long period of time. But when my political views became more public, I suppose, she ghosted me. Now, she's a nice person. I don't hold it against her. Her reasoning was, well, she gets enough hate for the politicians that she loves from family members who are on the other side of the fence, and she doesn't need it from me. Okay. But at the same time, I thought we were friends. And do you do that to friends? Do you just, cut them right out of your life if you stop agreeing with what they say, or if they stop agreeing with what you say? I have friends going back to the 70s, to the mid-70s, who never agreed with things politically. But we're still friends, so I don't get what's happened to the current process here. The group is paranoid about the outside world. If your group insists the end of the world is near, you're probably in a cult. The cults position themselves as a sole refuge from an evil outside world that is intent on their destruction. Cults thrive on conspiracy theories, catastrophic thinking, and perception complexes. Perception persecution complexes. Yeah, that's something I used to be guilty of. I used to think that the entire world was out to get me because I was involved in a mainstream religious group, but it also felt that it was being persecuted. And I never saw any evidence, actually, that they were ever persecuted. Maybe they were persecuted when they first started back in the 1800s, but they were never, ever persecuted in my lifetime, and they still are not. And they still think that they are. They still think that they're in this little bitty bubble, and everybody else around that bubble is out to get them. The group relies on shame cycles. If you need your group in order to feel worthy, loved, or sufficient, if you need the group to validate you, you're probably in a cult. Cult leaders trap members in shame cycles by imposing abnormally strict codes of conduct, usually prescriptions about diet, appearance, sex, relationships, media, guilting members for their shortcomings, or what they perceive as shortcomings, and then positioning themselves as the unique remedy to the feelings of guilt which they themselves created. Now, this could be said of a lot of churches, mainstream and not. So I'm wondering which ones are cults based on this one thing alone. But again, I'm trying to relate this to today's politics. And yeah, they will guilt outliers for something unique or having a position that does not match the official party. My personal favorite was Tulsi Gabbard in the last election cycle, or before the election, the primary cycle. And I saw that happening to her. They were actually calling her a cultist when they were acting as though they were the cult that she was not cooperating with. And therefore she was the evil one, and they were the saintly ones who she should have just conformed to, according to them. And so, yeah, that happens in politics as well. You are insufficient or unworthy on your own. The only way to become worthy is to confess your shortcomings to the group or leader. The leader then becomes the mediator of worthiness and the foundation of the members' self-esteem. Tulsi did not need to be validated by the Democratic Party, as somebody I could mention seems to feel the need to do. Yeah, I won't mention who it is, but I'll tell you this: he's not one of the 1%. So that might give you a clue. If you're held to a different moral standard, specifically in regard to sex, you're probably in a cult. Now, how does this apply to politics? The prevalent idea among cult leaders is that they are above the law, be it human or divine. They're above it all. This idea allows them to exploit their followers economically and sexually without repercussions. When confronted, they do not confess, but create justifications for their impropriety. Sexual grooming of members is common. Loyal cult members will perform any amount of mental gymnastics to justify or ignore the leader's behavior. Sexual grooming. I feel like anybody who is an adult, it shouldn't be, really, sexual grooming shouldn't apply, but if you're an intern, if you're a wide-eyed intern, and you're working for a politician that you respect, and that politician comes up to you and grabs you, pushes you up against a wall, and starts fondling you in a way that you did not invite at all, did not expect at all, did not want at all. You just were happy to work for the person. That is... And then they get away with it because they're who they are, and then they'll belittle you. You're nothing. You're nothing. This is what a cult leader would do. And I'm not going to name names here, but I think you know who I'm talking about. At least one of the people that I'm talking about. If your serious questions are answered with cliches, you're probably in a cult. Indoctrination or brainwashing is the process through which a cult slowly breaks down a person's sense of identity and ability to think rationally. Behaviors like excessive fasting, prayer, hypnosis, scripture reading, chanting, and again, the word is excessive, chanting, meditation, or drug usage can all be used to increase a person's vulnerability to the leader's suggestions. All of these things, I would say pretty much all of these things are really good things that maybe we should all do more often, but if it's like the leaders of the organization telling you to do it and making it so that you have to do it at certain times, otherwise you're not part of the group, you've lost your free will by being in this group. So the hallmark of indoctrination is the use of thought-terminating cliches. Platitudes like follow the leader or doubt your doubts are regurgitated over and over so that members don't have to critically analyze the complex issues. Doubt your doubts. Don't have any opinions about the group. Now, again, we're not talking about just Democrats. We're talking about some MAGA people I've known. Not everyone. Some MAGA people, very, very loud, and they give the entire Donald Trump community a very bad name for being such fanatics. But this is also true of the GOP, whether Donald Trump was there or not. And it's also true, of course, of the Democratic Party these days. Here's something else. There's no financial transparency. If you're not allowed to know what the group does with their money, oh my God, Hillary, they're talking about you. If you're not allowed to know what the group does with their money, you're probably in a cult. A group that refuses to disclose its finances is a huge red flag. Ethical organizations have nothing to hide. Cult leaders tend to live opulently, while their followers are required to make financial sacrifices. And that is pretty much America right now. That's how America is a cult, because here's Nancy Pelosi in her mansion living an opulent lifestyle. Most people in America would say that she's living one of the best lives you could possibly live, except when somebody paints bad things on her garage door. But, she got the best ice cream. She throws the biggest parties. People love Nancy Pelosi in that circle of friends that she has in her area. They love her. She is their queen mama. And cult leaders tend to live opulently while their followers are required to make financial sacrifices. Yeah. $40,000 couches in the White House. But we aren't even allowed to have jobs in a lot of cases these days. So we're having to make the sacrifices. Somebody else can go get their hair blown out and not live by any of the rules that they've set for everyone else. Members are often encouraged to pay their offerings, even if it means putting their families at risk. Yeah, you get those letters from all the parties. This is an existential threat and we need your money. They don't bother to ask if you have the money. We just need your money. We need your money so badly. Yes, because we're not getting enough money from the military-industrial complex to support our campaign. We just need your money. Only $40. That's all we need, $40. Love those letters. Get those all the time from everywhere. Going on, there's one more here about secret rites. Not R-I-G-H-T, but secret. R-I-T-E-S. If there are secret teachings or ceremonies you didn't discover until after you joined, you're probably in a cult. Cults use secret rituals as rites of passage that solidify a member's loyalty to the group. Initiation into these rites usually only comes after a member has undergone certain tests or made adequate financial contributions. You pay us enough, we'll let you in on the real deal. Oftentimes, cult initiations are confusing, bizarre, or even offensive. This mental dissonance between their sense of confusion and their loyalty to the inner circle convinces the initiate to double their efforts in order to properly appreciate the proceedings. This only further entrenches them in a shame cycle, making them even more susceptible to manipulation. So, think how that affects you in politics. We got into this last night online because Kim Iverson was making a video about how wokeism is the new cult and the new religion replacing evangelical Christianity, because the woke people, and I don't really consider them woke, but they think that they're woke. Those people, you know what I'm talking about, act very much like the moral majority and groups like that from the 80s when they took over the Republican Party. And now this group that is not religious per se, in the sense that they're not a church trying to affect things, but they're trying to affect things through the same tactics of guilt and shame and tearing down the other party to the point where you think that everybody in the other party is a Nazi or something equally horrible. So they discourage you from talking with or having friends who are a part of that other party. These are all things that a cult would do. And I was in a, like I said, I was in a sort of a cult in the 70s. It wasn't the kind of cult that made you disavow your family or anything like that. So they get away with saying that they're not a cult because you're free to talk to your family. But that's officially. You're free to talk to your family, but there's a strong implication that everybody that you know is going to hell or will be punished in some way by a benevolent, loving God. And they'll be punished in some way or banished from life itself or the afterlife. So you're always worrying about people, and you're always thinking, am I doing enough to get them into this organization so that they can be loved by God? Now, that's a horrible way to think. That's a horrible way to grow up. That's a horrible way to experience your those years when you're 12 or 13 or 14 or 15, somewhere in there, and that's when they usually get you. It's a horrible way to think. You have nightmares. You think, oh my God, somebody's going to miss out on what they would call the kingdom of God. And, you know, you've got to, like, look beyond their own propaganda, and then you find out that God is love. God loves everybody. It doesn't matter if you believe the right things. If there's a God, God loves everyone. God is love. Love is God. That's what we get from the book of John in the New Testament, especially that book. And I've always felt that that book was more the book that touched me. So I always consider myself, when I was a Christian, I'm not so much anymore because I can't live up to that. And that's what it's about. It's not about believing certain things. It's about living up to certain things. But it's hard to live up to those things in this world. It's hard. It's hard. I try. I like to say, if somebody asks me if I'm a Christian, I'll say, well, I am in my better moments. But that's not usually. But anyway, what's that got to do with the political parties right now? What it has to do with is, are you a Democrat? Well, when I'm acting like one, I'm a Democrat. If the Democratic Party is acting like the Democratic Party should act, then they're Democrats. If they're acting like Republicans, they ain't Democrats. They're conning you. If the Republican Party is acting like the Republican Party should act, which is conservative and keeping checks and balances so that the Democrats don't spend too much money and get us into horrible debt. If the Republicans were Republicans, they'd be Republicans, you know. But when they don't act that way, when they spend just as much money as the Democrats do on their pet projects that only help certain people, their people, then they're not being Republicans. They're not being conservatives. Conservative is as conservative does, and liberal is as liberal does. There's a lot of fake conservatives. There's a lot of fake liberals. And we've even gotten to the point where people call it's a bad name to be called one or the other. I think it's people that don't really know what liberal is supposed to mean, and they get it confused with the idea of a fake liberal. And so everybody who says that they're a liberal is fake. So, but I think you need to learn more about this and see because there are fake liberals, but they give every liberal a bad name. Just like there's fake Christians giving all Christians a bad name, there's fake Islamists who give all Muslims a bad name. And if you're not following a true path in any of these major religions, if you're not really taking it to heart and using it to help other people, not just people you like, but people in need, whoever they are, whether they deserve it or not. If you're not using your religious thoughts to actually help, then it's just lip service. Now that's the exact same in politics. If you're not using your political position to actually help, You can claim that you're feeding everybody in the whole world if you want to. But if you're not actually doing it or doing much to help, then you're just not a Democrat. If you're a Republican and you're not doing enough to keep our budget in check and balance, then you're probably not a real Republican. Now, that's all I'm going to say about this right now. I could go into other articles about cults, and I think this was a good start, though. I had to get some things off my chest. Because I was accused last night of just making stuff up and giving fodder to the other side, and it was all this stuff about, it was all like wrapped up in this intellectual thing where, you know, many topics were being thrown out and none of them actually applied to what I was saying, and that's a cult thing too. That's definitely a cult thing. Oh, you think that you're doing this, you know? So it's a form of shaming, only it's on this intellectual shaming level. Like you can't keep up with me and my thoughts because you are inferior. And really, if you were actually superior to me, you would form your thoughts in a way that appeal to me and help me to understand your point of view, instead of just going on and on and on and then claiming that what you said was perfectly normal. It's perfectly normal to you because you understand what you're saying, you know. So anyway, I don't want to get on that person's I don't want to go off on a tangent about that person. It was just a normal Twitter blah 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 little thing, a little war. Had nothing to do with anything, actually. But if you get a chance, watch the clips of the Kim Iverson show that will probably be coming out very soon. I'm talking to you on the last day of March of 2021. And she did a wonderful show last night on this topic. And everybody who thinks they're woke, you really need to watch her show from last night. Her show from March 30th. Now, I don't know if the whole show is available to watch in its long form right now, but there will be clips, I'm sure. So, I'm a huge Kim Iverson fan. She's not my cult leader. I don't have a cult leader. Don't follow leaders and don't trust parking meters or something like that. But, Kim's great. And if I had to be in a cult, it would be the Kim Iverson cult right now. But no, I've had some issues with some things she said, and that's fine, It should be fine. It should be like, just brush it off, man. You don't have to have everybody agree with every little thing that you think. I don't expect anybody to agree with everything I think, and if somebody did come along and they acted like they agreed with everything I think, I would be very suspicious of that person. And that's happened to me before. But I'm going to sign out now. I don't know how long this has been going on because I don't have a timer on. But since my GarageBand keeps wanting my attention, I suppose for a new update or something, I'm going to go and attend to my GarageBand's needs and see what happens there. But it's been fun talking with you. I'm going to go find some other trouble to get into in the outside world, or I'm just going to go lay on the couch or something. But thanks for listening to me. Thanks for sharing this. Thanks for checking out my radio stream, as you can see there on the screen. WreckingBallRadio.net. There's a PayPal link on there in case you would like to donate to me to keep me doing these kind of talks. I know I'm not that great at it. I stumble and I've had a stroke and heart attack and all that crap, and so some of my brain is damaged from the stroke, because that's what a stroke is. It's a brain attack. If they called it a brain attack, people wouldn't be so confused about what strokes are, by the way. People still think of strokes as some other form of heart attack, but really a stroke is a brain attack. And a heart attack is a heart attack. So, but anyway, since I've had both, sometimes I will not have complete control over the words that I'm trying to get out there, as you can see. But anyway, peace, love, harmony, empathy, all these things. I have nothing against you if you disagree with me on anything. I have nothing against you. There are some people that I will not communicate with online because their way of discussion is bullying, whether they know it or not. So I do tend to block some people, even though I don't want to. I don't want to block anybody. I don't want to have to block anybody. But if you're like, if you're getting my blood pressure up, you know, that's a sign that I need to, like, I don't need you in my life, you know? You're not being respectful to my situation. Whether you know about it or not. Doesn't matter. Be nice. You don't know what other people are going through. I'll put it that way. But anyway, have a great day or night or whenever you're watching this, whether it's today, the last day of March of 2021, or if you're watching sometime in the future and this is the only thing that you have to watch because you're somewhere stuck in space and somehow or another this video is your only entertainment and you watch it over and over and over again. I'm sorry. If that's the case, then whenever you're watching, I appreciate you. And thank you very much. I'm Jayson Tanner, WreckingBallRadio.net. If you want to contribute to the station, well, don't do that unless you listen to the station and actually like it, unless you're going there to donate because of our YouTube and BitChute presence. But that'd be cool of you. Either way, we're gonna sign off now. I swear, it's gonna happen. Have a great, interesting rest of whatever. Until we meet again. There's a doggy. All right, I'm gonna go now.